There are perhaps few customs more American than tipping. We've all been there, sitting at the restaurant, looking at the bill, wondering how much we should tip, if we should tip at all. Was service satisfactory? Did the food come out great? Was it a good experience overall? While tipping is not mandatory, it is common practice here in America. It allows the employer to underpay staff while relying on the customer to spend more money to make sure the employee can live. So maybe instead of making tipping an option, we make tipping mandatory. First, we will discuss how optional tipping hurts the employees. Then we'll discuss why it is hurting the employees and servers. And finally, we'll talk about the ways in which we can fix this broken, outdated system and help those in the service industry. Without tips, servers are severely underpaid and are essentially working for free. In an article published April 2nd, 2019 by PSU Vanguard, Moxie Rogers states, employers are only required to pay their servers state minimum cash wage. Under the Fair Labor Standards Act, this is as little as $2.13 an hour. Because of how tipping works here in America and how the laws are structured, many servers are making well below minimum wage, and they are forced to rely on tips from customers to pay their bills and cover their cost of living just to make ends meet. This lack of income protection for these employees is caused by a multitude of things. One of these reasons employees get hurt by optional tipping is because it's just that, optional. According to an article from January 7th, 2019, according to the Department of Labor, a minimum amount of tips is required for servers. Basically, they assume the guests will tip the correct amount, so the employer will not have to match the minimum wage depending on the state. Because employers can't assume patrons will tip the appropriate amount, they're allowed to pay their employees less. This is all fine and dandy until patrons fail to tip or don't tip an adequate amount, and the employee gets that lower wage without getting the benefit of the tip, and overall just hurts them in the end. Another reason that optional tipping hurts servers is because of the way our laws work when tipping. Employers are allowed to pay their companies less than minimum wage if they are tipped workers. According to the U.S. Department of Labor, the employer is prohibited from using the employee's tips for any reason other than as a credit against its minimum wage obligation to the employee, tip credit, or to the furtherance of valid tip pool. Because employers are legally allowed to pay less than minimum wage, and with the tips being optional, employees have no wage security and no financial security offered compared to those in other industries who have set wages. And unless things change and new laws are enacted, servers will continue to be hurt financially. However, there are a few things that lawmakers and employers can do to ensure adequate pay for these servers. One of the solutions to the problem is to pay servers state minimum wage while allowing them to still collect tips. An article from August 20th, 2019, published by the Washington Post, Tim Carman states, 7 states, including California and Minnesota, already require the same minimum pay for all workers. By forcing employers to pay the servers the same minimum wage as everybody else, they're giving them the financial protection they would not otherwise have. And by allowing them to still collect tips, it gives them much more financial freedom and the ability to live much more comfortably and not have to work as many hours as they would if tips were not mandatory. Another way for employees to have financial protection is to make tipping mandatory. However, there currently are no laws requiring tips to be left. In an article published by Reader's Digest on September 27, 2019, Emily DeNuzzo states, no law exists requiring customers to leave a tip. According to Abe Cohn, managing partner of Cohn Legal PLLC, if something is mandatory, it's technically not really a tip. According to Jordan Bernstein, a Los Angeles-based attorney representing chefs and hospitality practices, the IRS defines a tip as something optional or extra that only the customer determines, Bernstein says. So although mandatory tips would technically not be tips, by requiring the gratuity fee, it would help relieve much of the financial troubles faced by those in the service industry. It would also allow restaurants to pay these lower wages and keep that up while these employees are still able to live. And because of this, restaurants will be able to employ more people, and more people would have jobs. So first, we looked at why the current tipping process negatively impacts servers and those in the service industry. Then we looked at why it happens, what causes this negative impact. And finally, we discussed ways in which we can fix these just negative issues and problems in the service industry with tipping. With so much uncertainty in the world, one thing should remain certain, and that is knowing you will get paid for work you do. And because servers are already underpaid, tipping should be mandatory. Few things are more American than tipping, but maybe it's time we join the rest of the world and update this outdated system.